Welcome to our channel. Please subscribe for daily practice test.
IELTS listening test.
The test is in 4-part, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a man, Martin Hill, phoning an estate agent in order to find some accommodation. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Hello, Brindle's estate agents here. How may I help you?
Oh, good morning. I'm ringing to see what flats you have for rent at the moment.
Right. Can I start by just taking your name, Mr.
Hill. Martin Hill.
Right. And are you looking for a flat for yourself or, a family, perhaps?
Well, it's for 3 of us, myself and 2 friends. We're going to share together.
I see. What about employment? Are you all students?
Oh, no, we've all got full-time jobs. 2 of us work in the central bank, that's Chris and me, and Phil, that's the other one, is working for Hallam Cars, you know, at the factory about 2 miles out of town.
I'll put you down as young professionals then. And I suppose you'll be looking for somewhere with 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, at least 3. But actually, we'd rather have a 4th room as well, if we can afford it, for friends staying over and stuff.
Is that with a living room to share, plus kitchen and bathroom?
Yeah, that sounds good. But we must have a bathroom with a shower. We don't mind about having a bath, but the shower's crucial.
OK, I'll just key that in. And are you interested in any particular area?
Well, the city centre would be good for me and Chris, so that's our first preference. But we'd consider anything in the west suburbs as well, really. Actually, for Phil, that'd be better, but he knows he's outnumbered. But we aren't interested in the north or the east of the city.
OK, I'm just getting up all the flats on our books.
Now you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Just looking at this list here, I'm afraid there are only 2 that might interest you. Do you want the details?
OK, let me just grab a pen and some paper. Fire away.
This first one I'm looking at is in Bridge Street and very close to the bus station. It's not often that flats in that area come up for rent. This one's got 3 bedrooms, a bathroom and kitchen, of course, and a very big living room. That sounds a good size for you.
So what about the rent? How much is it a month?
The good news is that it's only £450 a month. Rents in that area usually reach up to $650 a month. But the landlord obviously wants to get a tenant quickly.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a bargain. What about transport for Phil?
Well, there'll be plenty of buses, so no problem for him to use public transport. But unfortunately there isn't a shower in the flat. And that location is likely to be noisy, of course.
OK, what about the other place?
Let's see. Oh, yes. Well, this one is in a really nice location, on Hills Avenue. I'm sure you know it. This looks like something a bit special. It's got 4 big bedrooms and, there's a big living room. And, oh, this'll be good for you, a dining room. It sounds enormous, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds great.
That whole area is being developed, and the flat's very modern, which I'm sure you'll like. It's got good facilities, including your shower, and of course it's going to be quiet, especially compared with the other place.
Better and better. But I'll bet it's expensive, especially if it's in that trendy area beside the park.
I'm afraid so. They're asking £800 a month for it.
Whoa, it sounds a lot more than we can afford.
Well, maybe you could get somebody else to move in too. I'll tell you what, give me your address and I can send you all the details and photos, and you can see whether these two are worth a visit.
Thanks, that would be really helpful. My address is flat 5.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a representative of a city council giving information about 2 new facilities which are opening soon in the city. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to say a little about 2 exciting new developments in the city: the Brackenside open-air swimming pool and the Children's Adventure Playground in Central Park. As many of you may know, the idea for these initiatives came from you, the public, in the extensive consultation exercise which the City Council conducted last year. And they have been realised using money from the SWRDC, the South West Regional Development Commission. First of all, Brackenside Pool. As many of the older members of the audience will remember, there used to be a wonderful open-air pool on the seafront 30 years ago, but it had to close when it was judged to be unsafe. For the design of this new heated pool, we were very happy to secure the talents of internationally renowned architect Ellen Wendon, who has managed to combine a charming 1930s design, which fits in so well with many of the other buildings in the area, with up-to-the-minute features such as a recycling system, the only one of its kind in the world, which enables seawater to be used in the pool. Now, there's been quite a bit of discussion in the local press about whether there would be enough room for the number of visitors we're hoping to attract, but the design is deceptive, and there have been rigorous checks about capacity. Also, just in case you were wondering, we're on schedule for a June the 15th opening date, and well within budget, a testimony to the excellent work of local contractors Hickman's. We hope that as many people as possible will be there on June the 15th. We have engaged award-winning actress Coral White to declare the pool open, and there'll be drinks and snacks available at the poolside. There'll also be a competition for the public to decide on the sculpture we plan to have at the entrance. You will decide which famous historical figure from the city we should have.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
And now, moving on to the Central Park Playground, which we're pleased to announce has just won the Douglas Award for Safety. The news came through only last week. The unique design is based on the concept of the global village, with the playground being divided into 6 areas showing different parts of the world, each with a representative feature. For example, there is a section on Asia, and this is represented by rides and equipment in the shape of snakes, orangutans, tigers and so on, fauna native to the forests of the region. Moving south to the Antarctic, we couldn't run to an ice rink, I'm afraid, but opted instead for climbing blocks in the shape of mountains. I thought they could have had slides for the glaciers, but the designers did want to avoid being too literal. Then on to South America, and here the theme is El Dorado, games replicating the search for mines full of precious stones. And then, moving up to North America, here there was considerable debate. I know the contribution of cinema and jazz was considered, but the designers finally opted for rockets and the International Space Station. Eastwards to Europe then, and perhaps the most traditional choice of all the areas, medieval castles and other fortifications. Then last but not least, moving south to Africa, and a whole set of wonderful mosaics and trails to represent the great rivers of this fascinating and varied continent. Now, the opening date for our global playground is the 10th of July, and again, we'd love to see you there. So, make a date and come and see this magnificent, original new amenity right in the heart of the city.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You are going to listen to a conversation between 2 students and a tutor. They are talking about essays. First, look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen, answer the questions. Write no more than 4 words or a number for each answer.
So, Pamela, here's your essay. And, Carl, you've already got yours back. Anything you want to ask or any comments?
Can you just go over again for us how the marks for our essays go towards our final grade?
Well, over the year, you're meant to write 5 main essays for this course.
Yes.
And each essay's marked out of 20, which gives you a total of 100 marks.
Yes.
This coursework makes up 50% of your marks for the year, with the other 50% coming from the written exam.
Right. So the 5 essays contribute to 50% of our final grade for the year?
Yes.
You gave me 18 out of 20 for this essay, which gives me a total of 9% towards my final grade for the year.
And I wanted to...
And with 14 for this one, I've got 7%.
Yes, Pamela. Does that clarify it?
Yes.
Yes.
We did have it explained to us at the beginning of the course.
When?
in the first tutorial.
OK, I think we'd better move on now. About your last essay, have either of you any questions or comments?
Before the conversation continues, look at questions 26 to 30. As you listen to the next part of the talk, complete the table. Write no more than 3 words for each answer.
You gave me 18 for this paper. What was the big difference between this piece and the previous one? I actually thought the first one was better.
Well, there was quite a marked difference.
Really?
Yes. It looked as if you had actually done quite a bit of research. You had quite a lot of relevant examples, especially on the historical side. You even found some information that I was not even aware of. Your sources were also very sound. And on top of that, your answer was very well organised indeed, and the writing style was very elegant.
Oh, thank you very much.
I must say that it was the best piece of writing for a paper that we've seen for quite some time.
I have to say, though, it took me a very long time to put it together.
How long?
At least 2 weeks.
But it was well worth it.
Can I just ask you if it's possible to rewrite the first essay of the term? It's really brought my average down.
I'm sorry, but it's impossible.
Is there no way to do it?
I'm afraid not.
OK, right. I'll just have to try to do better than average on the others.
And Pamela?
Well, to be honest, on the whole, I'm happy with my marks.
Again, your research was very good. And you gave quite a long list of source material, which was very good.
I spent quite a lot of time on this essay, more than the others.
Well, again, it shows.
What about the organisation? I was a bit worried about that.
Your organisation, I have to say, was excellent.
Oh!
But as regards your style...
Yes?
It is slightly too informal here and there. I think you need to tighten this up a little.
OK. I only wish I'd put a bit more effort into the first one as well now. But I would like to know how I can get my marks up even higher. What do I have to do, specifically?
Well, your work could do with being more thoroughly checked. You have quite a few spelling mistakes.
Yes, I know. If it's anything, I think it's the computer. Well, I'm not very good at typing. 2 fingers, really. And when I finish something like this, I find it difficult, even depressing, to go over it carefully again.
But it's affecting your marks. Your previous essay was much better than this one. Sometimes it's difficult to follow what's being said because of the frequency of mistakes. A couple of years ago, the university authorities would have been more lenient, but now they're very hot on presentation and have been coming down heavily on things like grammar and spelling. In fact, I am obliged to deduct marks from every piece of work which is not handed in fairly free of mistakes.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a lecture about how the production of ceramics, such as plates, pots and glass, first began. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the origins of ceramics. So first of all, let's start off with, what is a ceramic? Well, generally speaking, ceramics are what you get when you apply heat to certain inorganic, non-metallic solids and then allow them to cool. And examples of ceramics are everyday things like earthenware pots, crockery, glassware, and even concrete. So how did it all begin? Well, it all started around 29,000 years ago, when humans discovered that if you dig up some soft clay from the ground, mould it into a shape, and then heat it up to a very high temperature, when it cools, the clay has been transformed into something hard and rigid. And so what did those first humans do with their discovery? Well, they created figurines, which were small statues and which depicted animals or gods or any shape that the clay could be moulded into. And all this activity was centred around southern Europe, where there is also evidence of ceramics that were created much later. The early humans also found a practical use for their discovery, such as storing things like grain, although there were drawbacks. The pots were porous, so that although they could carry water in them, it wasn't possible to store it over a long period. And also they were quite brittle and shattered very easily if they were dropped. But despite these problems, it was many thousands of years before there were any improvements. In China, at around 200 BC, they discovered that by adding minerals to the clay, they could improve both the appearance and the strength of the ceramics. But it took nearly 1,000 years before they perfected the process to produce high-quality ceramics known as porcelain. And once they had perfected the process, they kept it a secret for another 1,000 years. Compared to the first ceramics, porcelain was lighter, finer, harder and whiter, and became an important commodity in China's trading with the rest of the world for hundreds of years. In fact, it became so valuable that it was known as white gold, and spies were sent to China to discover what they did to the clay to produce such high-quality merchandise. It wasn't until the 18th century that the secret began to unravel. A German alchemist called Johann Friedrich Böttger was asked by the king to make gold out of lead. Unfortunately, Böttger failed to achieve this and soon gave up. But in order to please the king, he attempted to make high-quality porcelain. And after many years of experimentation, he discovered that by adding quartz and a material called China stone to very high-quality clay, he managed to get the same results that the Chinese had been achieving for the last 1,000 years. We'll now look at another ceramic which is made from mixing sand with minerals and heating to over 600 degrees Celsius. When this mixture cools, the result is, of course, glass. The main difference between ceramics made from clay and glass is that clay is made up of crystalline plates which become locked together in the cooling process, whereas glass cools too quickly for crystals to form. Apart from that, the process of heating up naturally occurring materials to transform them is the same. The origins of glass date back to 3500 BC, but it wasn't until the Roman Empire, 2000 years ago, that the art of glass blowing and the practical uses of glass became more widespread. One of the more innovative uses was to use it in windows, as up until then they had just been holes in walls. It must have been very drafty in those days. The Romans were also responsible for inventing concrete, and although the origins are uncertain, experts think that this is largely due to the high level of volcanic activity in the area. The Romans observed that when volcanic ash mixes with water and then cools, it gets extremely hard and almost impossible to break up. The chemical reaction that follows is very complex and continues for many years, and the concrete just keeps getting harder. Evidence of this are the numerous Roman remains that are still standing, many of which are almost completely intact. One of the most important facts about concrete for the Romans was that it can be created underwater. As the Roman Empire grew, the Romans needed to take control of the seas, and for this they needed to build harbours capable of holding a fleet of ships. Pouring concrete mixture into the sea immediately started the hardening process, and rather than just dissolving in the mass of water, the substance was tough and long-lasting. This strange characteristic of concrete made a significant contribution to the success of the Roman Empire.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.